Hello and welcome to this AM Live 2021 session, Connecting with Customers in a Digital World. My name is Nathan Quayle and I'll be presenting today with my colleague Dan.
Thanks, Nathan. Yes, my name is Dan. Nathan and I work with some of our largest accounts within the AM100 franchise division. But what we do is we work cross-functionally with our inside reps as well. So we've got quite a high visibility of all different size dealerships. So take everything with a pinch of salt. We've tried to accommodate every single size dealership on this presentation. What we will like to say to start off is, thank you for joining. We very much empathize with everything going on in the world at the moment. It's tough. Nathan and I are here working from home. We have been for quite a long time now. You might see kids running in the background, who knows? So, we very much empathize with what's going on at the moment. So, hopefully you can sit back, relax. And if anything today, just hopefully you can take away some points, a bit of data and reflect on what you're doing yourself as a business. And maybe going away and think about how can we adapt? How can we be a bit more agile? How can we be a bit more optimistic about what's to come? I think what we have seen is really positive things from the industry as a result of lockdown and the things that have been happening last year. This year has started tough, but we're really, really optimistic about what's to come, and we think you should be as well. So what we're going to be running through today are three sections. We've broken down to three sections to make it easy. You're going to be with us for about 20 minutes or so. The first section is going to be Nathan talking about adjusting to the changing landscape. I'm going to come in and talk about innovating your approach to digital. So Nathan will be talking a bit more about the data. Then I'll be coming in with about some practical tips and advice and things we've been seeing from our dealerships on our website, what they've been doing during these tough times. And then at the end, both of us will share a little bit about what we've been doing as a business to help keep our employees happy and healthy and look after their well-being. Because I think that's the most important thing that any business needs to do during these times, because it's the people that are going to make us successful going forward.
As Dan mentioned, we're lucky enough to work with some of the largest dealer groups in the UK, and we're on the front line getting plenty of feedback directly. We've also got plenty of data that we're collecting in-house. So I'll take you through how we can adjust to the changing landscape. It's been a very turbulent year through 2020. And the stats from the next 4 slides are from sentiment studies, which we've carried out throughout the past 12 months. The most recent one being November 2020. And the aim of these studies was to track consumer confidence in the used car market and to try and identify any shifts in customer behavior throughout these lockdown periods. So the main stat we've found is that although car purchases have slowed, shoppers are still expecting to buy. So in the third and most recent consumer study, sentiment study, which we did in November, we found that nearly half the shoppers who intended to buy in 2020 said they were delaying their plans until 2021, which is understandable, particularly given the recent lockdowns. The better news for us all, though, is that just 7% of these people in the survey said they're putting their purchase on hold entirely. So we already know that lockdowns create pent-up demand. We saw that in the summer of last year. But in the most recent lockdowns at the very end of this year, this has skewed everything somewhat and delayed people's purchases even further. So if we turn our attention to the 7% on the right-hand side of the screen, are these customers lost forever, or can we convert them back into research and potential car buyers? And to maximize the chances of re-engaging with these customers, you could send soft emails to your remarketing lists, just give them really clear communication of how you're operating right now, what you're doing, when you plan to be open physically again, and just make sure you're there for them when they need you. You may well find they're back in the market when their own circumstances change, and you definitely want to be front of mind if they do. So some more key learners that we took from 2020 in the sentiment study were that throughout the first 2 rounds of the study anyway, we saw that despite many decided to delay their purchases, there were no signs that buyers were slowing down their actual research for a new vehicle. So in the latest round of the survey, we found that amongst those planning to delay their purchase, 3/4 were still actively researching. So as we enter this new lockdown, it's very likely that many will spend most of their time researching and seeking out the best deals so that they're ready to purchase and commit as soon as businesses reopen again. Makes it more important than ever to ensure that all of your stock is visible, up to date, and well advertised. We also found interesting that there's 20% new demand creation. So we learned that market changes have resulted in various shifts in people's behavior. There are job changes, people relocating, moving house, or opting for less reliance on public transport. Personally, I've moved from London back to Manchester recently. I didn't need a car in London, but now I found myself I do in Manchester. I know Dan's in a situation where his business mileage on his car is in excess over the past couple of years because he's not had to travel. And then obviously he'll be looking for a contract hire with less mileage than what he would have taken last year. So there's plenty of shifts going on in the market, which influence change in buyer demands, and it just forces this new purchase to come along sooner than perhaps many of us expected. And if we turn our attention to the right-hand side of the slide, we also see that there's increasing buyer openness to purchasing online. So it's no surprise during the pandemic and the recent lockdowns, this has accelerated buyer openness to digital retail solutions. But it's important, nevertheless, to realise the need to adapt accordingly to these. So many people have formed habits through online shopping, maybe doing their groceries online for the first time, or maybe even doing their Christmas shopping online for the first time. If not for the first time, at least more than they have done previously. So this has spurred on the rise of click and collect and made it more of a normal purchasing journey. Although this is great news, the buyer preference for purchasing is still lagging behind buyer openness. So only 33% of 2020 prospective buyers said they would prefer to buy online. So this is a gap between the openness to buy online, 66%, and the preference to buy online, 33%. So this shows that many shoppers value and miss that in-store experience during the times of lockdown. So to address this during the near term, especially when we are locked down and we can't give that in-store experience, we can innovate these existing digital retail solutions to meet that current buyer demand for remote shopping solutions.
Yeah, and just on that point, Nathan mentioned, I think there's two things here. There's the circumstance and also buyers' habits. So as Nathan mentioned, my circumstances have changed. Last year when we were out on the road, being able to visit our clients and accounts, the amount of mileage we clocked up was phenomenal, and I had to make sure my contract adhered to that. Whereas now and going forward, I'm not 100% sure what that's going to be, but I'm still in my contract for another year. But I'm already looking and researching to think about, okay, for my next car, what is that going to be? What's that going to look like? And I'm having a look online and I'm researching and starting to gather that information. And this is just two individuals, who work in the same business, whose circumstances have changed as a result of, the restrictions and lockdowns and things that have happened over the past year or so. And so just think about your consumers as well. How are their buying habits changing? And I think if anything, it just reiterates how important it is, to not just look at the hard leads coming into your business, but the viewability, visibility, the different types of interactions that consumers are participating online, and how can you follow up with them as well. And then lastly, the habits, Nathan mentioned, if you've got consumers who have never really bought online before in general, and usually they'd have to go out to the shops, they'd have to queue up, find parking space, maybe pay for parking, buy the item, then get home and unpack it. And instead now, because they've been forced to, they can order something, it comes the same day, and they're very happy about it. They're not going to go back to their old way of purchasing. So it's the same with a car. Even though the purchase is a lot bigger and there is still obviously a need for the consumer to want to go and have that experience and see the car, there's an argument to say that if consumers do have a fantastic experience online researching and buying that vehicle, they're very unlikely going to go back to the old way of purchasing. So I think car dealers have an opportunity here to really change the narrative and drive that narrative of purchasing and researching vehicles online. We've seen the change, increase over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's only going to move forward a lot quicker now.
You're absolutely right, Dan. And although people don't like change when they're forced into it, sometimes they realize that it's better than they ever had it before. And the beauty of having more activity and more of the car buying journey online is more data and easier access to data. So you need to leverage as much of this data as you can to maximize your margins and the visibility of your stock. So whatever your business type or your strategy is, the information that you have will help you realize that you can influence how your vehicles are priced to other vehicles in the market. You can influence the speed of sale. You can influence the margins that you have in them. And this is especially important right now because price demand and changes have been drastic throughout 2020 and into 2021. So it's more important than ever to keep ahead of your competition and really squeeze the most value from any digital investments that you have ongoing at the moment. We also want to attract some informed buyers as many informed buyers as possible to your sites. So if you take all this data and you use it properly, you can enhance your vehicle details pages and the information on your websites and your classifieds. Some more enhanced vehicle details pages means they're more searchable. That means you'll get more interactions and ultimately more leads and sales. So more detailed searches mean lower funnel shoppers. And we see, because the physical aspect of the car buying journey has been completely taken away right now, we see a lot of shoppers doing more detailed searches online. So they might be searching for specific trims, options that certain cars have, and going into a bit more detail. If you are not showcasing them online, that car will not be found when the customer searches in that way and uses them long tail searches. If you do tick all these boxes and the customer has this complete set of information online, you'll be engaging in better quality conversations once the lead's been submitted itself, rather than wasting time on questions that could have been answered physically on your details page or your images. Dan's going to go into a bit more detail on this shortly. And it's also extremely important to showcase your online reputation. So in a click and collect world or an online delivery world, you've got to push brand, push reviews, and push your reputation, because right now, that's all someone's got to go on. If they're spending £10,000 or more, the only way you have to convince them to choose you is through your reputation and how you do business and how you appear online. I'm now going to pass you over to Dan, who's going to give you some practical tips on innovating your approach to digital.
So one of the first things that we implemented as a business and allowed dealers to do on our website is Advertise contactless services. And this continues to remain in high demand for consumers when searching online. So currently 84% of current buyers prefer using at least one contactless service. And some of the most popular ones include private dealer appointments. Now, this was kind of in the interim between kind of these kind of more stringent lockdowns, but still something to think about going forward, especially as businesses are working leaner now. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of business structural changes over the last few months, which is a shame to see. So businesses are working leaner, but there's also been some positives that have come as a result of that. How do you handle dealer appointments? How do you schedule your days and your handovers and moving vehicles around, all that sort of stuff? So businesses are being more proactive about what they're doing. And there's obviously a need for consumers as well to want to be able to come in at a time that suits them. You've then got videos and virtual tours of the vehicles and the showrooms and things like that, which is very prominent at the moment. And then also home delivery. This is something which we know in the industry has kind of been discussed quite at length about, fully purchasing a vehicle online with zero touch point physically at the dealership. These are popular at the moment, and more dealers are starting to do it. So what we will say is just make sure you are advertising these vehicles online, because at the moment 46% of dealers are displaying contactless services, which means that there's 54 who aren't. So if you are offering contactless services, make sure, especially on Car Gurus, on your vehicle details page, speak to your account manager, make sure we are listing that online for you. Because what that means is that when a customer lands onto your vehicle details page with your branding on there, they can see that you are offering these contactless services. I think the biggest word which came out of the first lockdown was safety. And you want to make sure customers, feel safe. They trust that they're getting a vehicle from a dealership who are looking after their staff and also their, customers who are coming into the business as well. We can also put them online so consumers can find you as well. So we're seeing that consumers are searching for dealers who are offering these sorts of contactless services as well. So you need to make sure they are on there. So you've got that side of things about advertising what you're already doing. The second part of this, like Nathan mentioned, is about demand, which has been created, which has been forced into the market as a result of the things that have happened over the past 12 months. So we have products that we've brought to market, which, enable dealers who are offering delivery, for example, in order to expand their reach and to advertise their vehicles to consumers outside their typical market area. Typically in the past, we find consumers do search within their local area, but at the moment, especially when inventory is kind of going up and down at the moment and it's scarce, if you have a perfect vehicle for a consumer who maybe lives outside of 50 miles, maybe 100 miles of your typical market area, you now have the ability to advertise those vehicles to in-market relevant consumers. And these are things which are available now. So you can start thinking about, right, this is where we are. We need to be agile as a business. And we've seen that the businesses who are most agile and reacting to the now are doing the best and will come out of this the strongest. So start having to think about what you're doing as a business to make the most of the demand which has been created over the last 12 months. The next section I'm just going to talk about here is actually customizing your approach to lead outreach and also lead management as well, which I'll come on to in a moment. Nathan touched upon this a little bit in regards to what you can do about putting your vehicles online, pricing them, providing as much information as possible in order to make sure that the leads coming into the business are as low funnel as possible. So you don't have to deal with questions which could have been answered, earlier in that customer's car buying journey. So transparency remains key. It's one of our strongest values. It's our mission to be, trust and transparent in the market. So in order to do that, you need to make sure your photos are clear, offering videos to consumers if you have the ability to do so, ensuring your descriptions are as accurate as possible. Make sure you're working with your providers who you work with to make sure that every single description is coming across, because that's going to help those vehicles be listed better, but also it's going to provide more trust and transparency for the consumers. Just have a think about if you was an individual buying something online, you were buying something new, whatever the prices of that product, it arrives packaged, and you're very confident that it's going to come. And if there were any issues, or if there was a chance of issues happening for that product, you could return it and everything would be fine. For a used car, or for a used item in general, whether you're buying it from a social marketplace or if we're talking about a used car in general, again, there's a different perception here. If it's had one owner, two owners, what's the history of that vehicle? What's the perception of buying a new car versus a used car? Does that consumer require more information up front? Do you need to make sure that you've got images of any dents or marks or whatever it is on that vehicle? So when that customer receives it, they're going to be happy. I think dealers need to make sure that they're confident about the vehicles they're putting online and providing as much information as possible. And that becomes more apparent as consumers do get more confident with buying vehicles, and fully transactioning online. So when we are looking at lead generation and lead management, I think the first thing we need to think about is providing as many options as possible to consumers to interact with your dealership. Gone are the days of just phoning up or walking down a strip of car dealers and going into them. That had started to change anyway, but especially while car dealer showrooms are closed at the moment, we need to be able to allow the consumer to interact with you in the way that suits them at the time it suits them. We've already mentioned about Nathan and I's, personal circumstances, and some of us are just doing a bit more research. Nathan's needs are maybe a bit more sooner than mine, so he might want to, start speaking to some car dealers at the moment. And again, I might prefer to pick up the phone and say, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, I'm ready to pick up this vehicle. Nathan might decide, actually, I want to send a WhatsApp in, I'm actually interested about getting the vehicle delivered because I don't feel it's safe to go out and about at the moment, depending on what the restrictions are. So you need to be able to allow the consumer, depending on where they are in their car buying process, to interact with you. And if you don't have these services in place, think about, the classifieds, the web providers you work with. For example, with Car Gurus, do you have these services set up so a consumer can interact with you in that way? At the end of the day, we know speed of reply is important. It's always going to be important. But you'll start hearing, you probably already start seeing articles online talking about how important it is to personalize your interaction with every single customer. This becomes a lot harder, especially as businesses become leaner, and it takes a lot more time. But the rewards are so much more fruitful. You need to provide the best customer experience as possible. And the difference between, as I said, a customer phoning and wanting a vehicle there and then, how can I get this vehicle? How can I pick this up? Versus a consumer who's maybe submitted a WhatsApp lead and is asking about delivery, might require two different approaches. So respond to them quickly, but then that customer who wants the vehicle delivered, you might need to ask them more questions. They may ask you more questions as well. Do you need to take them further down the process and maybe stop the customer in their tracks and ask them a few more questions about what they're looking for? Because you need them to feel as confident as possible before they do end up buying that vehicle. So this next section, Nathan's going to take, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what business is and what we have been doing to maintain a strong culture of collaboration and partnership.
Dan, some fantastic tips there, and we really do see a lot of our top performing retailers and groups implementing a lot of what Dan's just talked about, just to get the most out of the way that our car buyers are shopping right now. So we've been through the data, we've been through the processes and the tips of how we can utilize that data and insight. But we all know that it's people that make our organizations tick. So in the past year, it's been more important than ever to ensure that we're being aware of and protecting the well-being of not only ourselves, but all of our colleagues around us. I'd just like to share a few things we've been doing to keep on top of our mental health throughout 2020 and into 2021. So we've been keeping our teams connected and motivated with, firstly, a couple of company-wide holidays, World Mental Health Days. So these were days off work where we were given various resources to look after our mental health. so we could look through them and see what works best for us. We've also been implementing coffee roulettes, where we get paired with a random member of the organization, and it's to simulate them coffee and kitchen chats that you'd essentially have in a normal office workspace. And you can just talk around either personal work, and it just mixes up from your current silos that you work in and gets you out of the talking to the same three people day in, day out. We've also had access to some fantastic software such as Headspace and some meditation apps that we can use in our own time for either personal or work use and really get the most out of everything.
And then second of all, it's been important for us to ensure that our partners feel supported as well. So, last year and even recently as well, providing dealers with ongoing discounts, during these challenging times. These aren't easy decisions for businesses to make. And I think a lot goes into these decisions, but I think it has been great that the industry have been coming together in order to help each other during these times. And, we're very proud of what we've been able to do as well. Second of all, devotion to our dealers through our account management process. So all the things we've spoken about already today, you have account managers that you can speak to figure out these things. Conversations we've had about lead management and lead generation, consulting dealers about how do they do it currently? Could they, could they take those leads and direct them to one single place and have a few individuals manage them before they go out, qualify them earlier? Again, through our account management strategy, we're constantly on the phone trying to be proactive with our dealers, and even there just for a chat. These are tough times. We're speaking to dealers every single day of the week. We might be able to share best practices from what others are doing, which you might not have the time to do. So make sure you do utilize your account managers. And then lastly, just continuous development of our products. We're constantly looking at what we can do to solve problems for dealers and provide better solutions. I've mentioned a couple of things today that we've already done, that we've brought to market sooner than expected as a result of the things that have happened over the past 12 months. And these products have enabled dealers in order to capitalize on the opportunity which has been created. And we will continue to do so. And a lot of these products do come directly from dealer feedback saying, Car Gurus, we want to do more, we want to do this, can you help us? We have the data, we have the tech, and we need to listen to you in order to create these products to solve your issues. So that's pretty much it from us. The one thing we just wanted to leave you with was a quote. We thought it made sense during these tough times, and the word which came to mind for myself and Nathan was resilience. And this is from Sir Clive Woodward, and Sir Clive Woodward actually presented at our Navigate conference last year. Unfortunately, it was virtually this time, which was still a great event. Hopefully we can do it face to face this year, but we thought it was great to choose Clive as he had a great session on leadership there. This wasn't a quote from the day, but I thought it was perfect for today's presentation. And it says, "Our success has not been a continual series of victories. We have had a number of devastating setbacks. How these are handled is the making of a great team. Winning does not happen in straight lines." And I feel, those businesses who are the most resilient now and do work the hardest now are going to be the most successful coming forward. And we do wish you all the best.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you to everybody who's taken the time to tune in or watch on catch up. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the insight from the presentation was actually taken from November's sentiment studies. And we're more than happy to share these with you. Just let Dan or myself know. Our details are on the screen right now. We're now going to jump into a live Q&A. But if you've got any questions at all around anything, how Car Gurus can help your business, or you want a copy of that sentiment study, please do get in touch. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joining me just now for a live Q&A are Nathan and Dan, who you've just seen just earlier in the video. I'd like to remind you there is still time to ask some more questions. We're allowing about 10 minutes or so for this Q&A session, so please do type away. We've had a bunch of them in already, so perhaps if we start from the top then to Dan and Nathan. Will the survival of a dealer's business be determined by its ability to adapt to digital, integrate with a host of different systems, and partner with the various sales platforms now available to consumers? Who wants to go first on that one?
Yeah, I don't mind taking that one first, Tim. So I think there's a few parts to this question. So can you sell cars without integrating into all digital platforms? And ultimately, yes, you can. You can sell cars without any digital input at all. But ultimately, how efficiently can you sell them and what kind of margins that you'd be commanded on them cars would vary drastically depending on how many platforms you do integrate with. The slice of the pie you get in terms of visibility in the market will obviously be a lot larger the more platforms that you do tend to partner with. There's obviously a point where you get to some diminishing returns. If you're on every platform that exists, yes, you'll be everywhere, but that's not ideal. So I think it's just about measuring it, figuring out where you need to be, what it costs you, and what you get out of the back end in terms of incremental business, and then just picking which ones work for your dealership.
Dan, do you have anything to add on?
Not too much. I think Nathan covered it all. I think the biggest word in that is adapt and adaptability. Over the past 12 months, I think every business has had to adapt from their normal way of working. And if we look at other industries, the industries who have adapted the fastest or in the best way have survived the test of time. And I think that's going to be the same for this industry as well. As Nathan alluded to, digital isn't the only way. It's one of the best ways, and it's a way that you can track things and improve. But I think if you can take from it, is just to be adaptable. Social media, whatever it might be, whatever you're going to invest your time in now because it's here and it's working for you, you need to go all in. But in 6 months' time, a year time, it might not be the best thing for you. So again, you need to adapt again. So I think, there's going to be multiple ways that dealers can kind of enhance their digital presence online. It's figuring out what that is now, working as best you can to optimize it. But the biggest thing is just adapting and just making sure you're adapting as much as you can to bring the best, return to your business.
I guess further to what you were saying there, both of you really, I think often we tend to be a bit guilty of thinking mainly about the kind of AM100 groups, but there are a lot of smaller businesses out there. And like you were saying, Nathan, it's really properly considering what is right for your dealership and actually taking the time to give some thought and see what the options are.
Yeah, the pros and cons. I mean, obviously, if you look at the AM100s, they would have bigger budgets to do these kind of things over your smaller independents. But surprisingly, we do see a lot of smaller independents are a lot more agile in these environments. So they can move really quickly, they can test things, they can give things a shot without spending fortunes. And it pays just as much reward. That there's pros and cons to being a large or a smaller group. And both have their positives in terms of moving quickly when things get tough or you have to change things.
Okay, thank you. Another question's come in asking how dealers have reacted to CarGurus' growing presence and how they turned this into an advantage.
I can take that one this time around. I mean, it's been great. The last 5.5 years that we've been kind of in the UK market, it's been fantastic, and the relationships and partnerships that we've built has been tremendous. But flipping it on its head a little bit, I think the biggest thing that we've seen, and does relate to the past 12 months, is how inspiring the industry has been to what's been happening and how hard it's been. We were just talking a minute ago before we came to the Q&A about all the different challenges we have with kids and pets and things like that. And it's just been really inspiring to see how dealers have responded to the support from third-party providers, us and the likes out there. And I think it's been great that people have been able to come to the party and help, and they've been our accounts have been really grateful for that. And I think that's the main thing. They see the likes of us as a strategic partner, not just for the now, not just based on ROI like we were talking about in that first question. It's about the future. How can we grow with our accounts? How can we grow from a dealer's perspective? How can we grow with our third-party providers to to next year, to on to to 5 years beyond? We still remain the fastest growing marketplace in the industry, and I think that is down to both our investment in our business, the products, but also just a partnership from our accounts. We've had accounts who've been with us since day one, and we value them just as much as we do any dealer signing up with us today. And I think that's the main thing. I mean, going through this year, you will have seen from the news that we are looking at unifying our two businesses. So we acquired Piston Heads, which is a very reputable brand, as at the start of 2019. And we're looking at bringing those businesses closer together. It's a huge investment, both from resource and financially as well. but we see growth in that. And the only reason why we do that is because we want to provide our consumers with the best buying experience and the best buying journey possible. But also our accounts, we want to give them best return of investment possible as well. And we know by doing these things and investing in our business for the long run, that they're going to get that.
Fantastic, thanks, Dan. A couple of questions have come in now about, you gave quite a lot of consumer insight earlier in your presentation. So there's a question here asking about what you think are the main criteria that consumers are looking for when they first embark on the car buying journey, and are dealers meeting those needs? If dealers were meeting the needs, would there be a market for the like of car gurus?
Yeah, I'll take that one. If we start at that, so that last piece, will there be a market for the likes of car gurus or other classified sites? Yeah, absolutely. Even if dealers were doing everything exactly right, and the reason for that is consumers want choice, and they don't want to be spending time going from website to website. Everyone's time poor. Even though we're all sat at home not doing much, people still do not want to just be jumping everywhere across the internet. And so there's definitely a place for classifieds and aggregators, and that is just to collate everything into one space. You can easily compare it, and you can get a good feel for what you want. I think the second part of that is, after you've figured out what you want in terms of reviews and comparing cars, you then go to the dealer space. And that's where, the dealerships that are really doing a great job of online retail, that's where they capitalize. It's the conversion rate from clicking from either Google or YouTube or a classified site to a dealer's website. That conversion depends on how good that dealer is actually doing in their digital retailing. And from a customer point of view, obviously we can't do anything physical right now. We can't go to forecourts and look at cars. So more customers have been doing more detailed research, spending more of that time online. So as I said in the presentation, it's more important than ever to get the right spec on there, the right pictures, just information overkill, because they do not have the ability to come down and look at that vehicle. So you've just got to give them as much confidence as you can before they get there.
Oh, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that point, Nathan, that there used to be a practice of leaving certain key pieces of information out of adverts to get the customer on the phone. I think those days are pretty much long gone, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's turned on its head. There might have been a time where it did work, and it was probably a time where, from magazine days, people used to have a look in the paper. You had very little information to go on, and then used to phone for the rest. But I think it's the opposite now. If you don't have that information online, the phone's not going to ring full stop, because there will be another advert with another similar car that'll have all of that information, and then you'll just submit your lead whichever way you want anyway. I think you're absolutely right on that, Tim. Maybe back in the day, but things have definitely changed.
Sorry, Dan, you were gonna add something earlier to what Nathan was saying.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Tim, you kind of touched upon a little bit what I was just going to add on to Nathan's point. And I think from the consumer's perspective, we spoke about it in the presentation about how you need to adapt your your lead approach, both your getting leads into the business, but also how do you handle those different types of leads as well. It's going to require a very personal and different approach. And the reason why is because every customer is in a different place. Circumstances have changed a lot recently, but every customer is going to be in a different place. Some will know exactly what they want to get, and you need to be in a position to attract that customer. If they're searching for a Ford Fiesta 1.6 Z-Tech diesel in black, you want to be able to appear in those search, and it's very hard for sometimes dealers to do that themselves. The great thing about the likes of us is we have that capability, we have that data and insights, and we're constantly learning in order to drive the most relevant consumer possible to the exact vehicle that your dealership has within the right area. But then on the flip side, you might have a customer who's not sure. They might literally be starting their car buying journey and going, what do I like? Oh, I kind of like SUV type vehicles. And you want to be able to accommodate that search as well as the one that the customer knows exactly what they're looking for. And being on a classified site, I guess, like Car Gurus and the likes, allows you to be able to do that at scale.
Okay, thank you. I think we're almost out of time, but we'll quickly go for one more question, and then any more that have come in. Perhaps you guys can go on the chat room later and kind of respond to those on there. How have Car Gurus supported the dealers to adapt their businesses to the current new normal and actually become ready for the future too? That's been sent in by Will.
Yeah, I can just take that first. You know, we've done everything we can within our power. I think it's as simple as that. It's a constant thought on our mind. What can we do to support our dealers? But to the same extent, it's what we can do to support our colleagues. I can see a question in there about coffee roulette, and that was a great idea to set up. You know, we can talk from a personal perspective how great Car Gurus have been as a company to us as employees, you know, giving us time when we need it. You know, there's been a lot of challenges that we faced as a company with very many personal things which have happened, which we've had to deal with. But because of that culture that we have, we also try and adopt and apply the same strategy to our accounts as well. You know, we care. And by the way we do that is by being proactive. You know, we don't just wait for dealers and think, oh, let's just wait until they're okay. We're picking up the phones to whatever size account, whatever size dealership. How are you doing? Are you okay? Is there anything we can help with? We have solutions for you. If you want to go after it, we can help you in this way. And I think the main thing is just about being as proactive as possible with our account management strategy. And that's paid dividends for us because we've had some great feedback from dealers.
Brilliant. You mentioned coffee roulette. I can't let you go without explaining briefly what that is. You've got 20 seconds. Go.
Yeah, Nathan, you've got a good explanation for this one.
So it's set up by our fantastic HR team, and basically it's to simulate that kind of coffee station meetup you'd have in a normal office. It's worked specifically well for me because it pairs you up with just a random person from the organization. It doesn't have to work in your team. They don't have to work on your projects. You get paired together and you just get together for 30 minutes and chat about anything. I started Car Gurus in February. I've not actually got to meet a lot of my colleagues. I've been working virtually pretty much the whole time. So it's been fantastic just to get to know everybody through that medium.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. If anybody wants to engage in coffee roulette with Nathan or Dan, then please do go to the chat room. Thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for Car Gurus for providing this session, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.